So we're going to compress 2 academic semesters or graduate international studies programs into 30 minutes, and I'm going to tell you why understanding of global value chains are important, not just for campus infrastructure, but for our primary academic and research enterprises. That'll be my excuse for glossing over some of the distinctions that academics who study this area in considerable detail will make between, say, value chain and supply chain. There is a lot of study in this area. I don't think that's any surprise to anyone, certainly not to Ted, who's on the call. There's all kinds of buzzwords, small and medium enterprises, greening production chains, capturing value for small actors, multilateral scalability, green inward-looking incubators, but we're going to take a more practical view, and we're going to, as usual, sweep right through this. So, but we have a tradition of introducing everyone, and everyone knows who I am, and I'd like Ted to, you want to say a little something about yourself?
Oh, I'm just a lowly professor right now at Purdue, starting up their facilities engineering and management program, and we're keeping folks or the students here who understand construction aware that there's more than just the first step of getting the facility constructed.
Yes, I try to remind them that 80% of the cost is over the operations of it, right? Let's see, we have Mike. Want to say a little something about and Mike is in Los Angeles. Are you able to talk, Mike?
Yeah, I'm able to talk, yes. I'm audiovisual. I'm from Los Angeles, and I guess it's okay to say I'm going to be editing this, I think, maybe, to make you all sound better and make the quality better. So.
Right. I'd like to remind everybody we're actually in the code writing and vote getting business. We don't really produce media. That's what I talked to Joe, the folks at Penton Media. I try to remind them. They're probably listening to this. American School and University sounds like they want to cover more of what we're doing here. So I'm hoping that they will take the message to the industry. Our principal job is to write code and get votes, and this is even a secondary, tertiary purpose, but it's important to keep people informed. So thanks very much for your time, Mike. And Drew, you want to, something else you want to say, Mike?
No, nothing else.
Okay. Drew, hi there.
Yes. Hello.
Go ahead.
Andrew Green over here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, on a lovely spring day, and there's snow outside because that's what we get for living in Michigan. I helped Mike get his message across on the worldwide inner tubes via several different types of web development style tools using using WordPress and other types of, like I said, development tools and social media.
Perfect. Thanks. So as is our custom here, we like to see what's going on elsewhere. And let's see here. What do we have? We actually have people working in Clemson. I'm seeing people. I'm seeing trucks moving. What do we have over here at the Watt Family Innovation Center? Do I see people moving here? That guy seems to be stationary. What's going on at the West Zone Construction? Oh, here's people moving here. And what's going over here? It looks like another research building. Oh, all right. So I'm thinking of Joe right now when we say there's a lot of construction in the education industry. Here's your proof. So anyway, that's always a little fun to see what's going on. Better weather, obviously, and we are live here. So what's the other thing we like to do? The other thing we like to do is to actually go through what have we done for the week. We have a canon. I like to remind everybody that what we do is to make things safer, simpler, lower cost, and longer lasting. And so at the end of every week, we try to think about, well, what have we done? So this week, we picked out, I always do these in reverse order because this is the last, this was this morning's issue we picked up. We've been working almost a couple years on this. Looks like we're going to have our $24,000, or I'm hoping I can charm Purdue. Ted, Are your sustainability people? Are they rolling in cash and clover? Do you think they could? Do you think they could come up with another $7,000 to help us get this research project done?
Well, they might be rolling in cash. I know that I'm not, and I can't commit them. That's the problem.
All right, I think it's spend the governor's money. Anyway, well, what this does is it basically unlocks what I like to say. Of course, I work in Power of 10. This is to try to solve this problem of transformers being so vastly oversized. It's fairly well documented. We just got to get the proof. The committees are ready to pounce upon a change that will allow engineers to do something different. So that solves right in one fell swoop. That makes things safer, simpler, lower cost, and longer lasting. That's a huge gain. We got half of it last time, and we want to get what I call the other half of it now. So anyway, so that's what was going on today. Yesterday, what do we deal with? Okay, this is the IEC. This is somewhat related. I think I deliberately did this because I wanted the industry to see that a lot of what we're doing at the national level is being inspired by other governments and other governments that are emboldened to work with our government to create new initiatives for all the shared ideas we have about smart grid, microgrid, energy conservation, et cetera, et cetera. It's a little more complicated than that, of course. That's why we founded this committee, and it's right here. And we also have a Twitter site here also. So suffice to say that in the IEEE universe, they weren't looking at education and healthcare as well, and we think we're going to be fixing that. We hope to be fixing that. So this is a new committee site where we're going to hopefully every day come up with an idea for doing much the same, but just for education and healthcare facilities. Okay, so that's what we did yesterday. And what did we do? Okay, so Wednesday we dealt with, I sat through some of this. They want to make the manufacturers retest and re-rate the furnaces and boilers. And because so many of universities have outlying residential assets, it's going to be costing folks money. What is the outlying residential asset situation there at Purdue, Ted? Are you anything like us?
Well, of course we're like you. When you say outline, you mean small, less than 5,000 square foot facilities that students live in?
No, that would be student housing. This is where a benefactor, a small academic program, say the Sanskrit art, gets a house bequeathed to them through a family. And the university here at U of M, I know we own dozens of them. We used to own hundreds of them, but I think dozens of them in the area. And so, these.
Okay, we've done a pretty good job of getting rid of all those boat anchors.
Okay. All right, that's the end of that then. So regardless, those who haven't will still have to deal with it. They're going to see these additional testing costs conveyed through, and so that might be 2 or 3 steps removed from us, but we do try to follow the DOE. Okay.
Well, there's some, Michael, this is important stuff because there are some institutions that have a predominance of facilities as you've described.
Well, in Europe, I know, but also Harvard, at least it did back in the 70s and 80s. They're really deeply, a lot of those, in fact, the first Kennedy Center, was it Mount Auburn? It was right across from, excuse me, Mike, I've got to stop those sounds. It was right across from Mount Auburn. There used to be a place called, was a sandwich place. In any case, the original Kennedy Center was in a house. So that's at Harvard, and I know that there are a lot of, and there still are here at U of M also.
Yeah, a lot of East Coast institutions, particularly in urban areas, are going to have a lot of those small buildings. Plus, the folks who can afford this stuff the least, the small liberal arts institutions that are private are going to have a problem.
That's right, yeah. Actually, it was called Elsie's, and Elsie's is no longer there. Anyway, it was a little deli right across from the Kennedy Center. Anyway, when it was a house. So, and then what do we deal with? Now, Ted, it would be nice to have you in on this one. but if you want to mark up this document, it's coming. It's as I try to say here, it's not an insignificant revision to this. Coming from the Iron and Steel Institute. So that's not my area, but I know the process of review. The whole thing is here for experts such as yourself to drill down in. I've combined anything dealing with structural steel into one issue, and we're having just one teleconference, and we'll put them all together. We're starting to see them accumulate. So this is what we did. This is what we did on Tuesday, I think, and I think we started the week. We started the week with another hammering by ASHRAE, with apologies to my good friends at ASHRAE, but they just unloaded 22. There's 3 more onto the, no, I think this is up to 25 now. So in any case, this is all affects hospitals. Again, it's not insignificant. So one of these is procedural, but the other one is actually significant. So we have until April 19th, not a long time, to turn these documents around. So that's what our week looks like. And with that, I'm going to get started on this so we can go home. Let's see. So I will let you know that I have 4 or 5 places where you can stop me, but in the interest of time, I'll rip through this, and then please ask your questions, and we can try to fully dimension this topic. So as I mentioned in the announcement, that this was based on this topic was based on an article, one of the early articles that I had written for facilities manager. It was pulled at the last minute, and I'm hopeful that it'll be worth a lot of money at some point when I become a famous author like Mike Toner out there in LA, right, Mike? Anyway.
Yep.
So my colleague here from the where's Gabriella? Oh, here, this is her writing here. Okay, so she actually gives a formal definition of what a global value chain is. It's not the same thing as a supply chain. So then, of course, Rich and I wrote this for the ISO flagship magazine. This was published in last month, actually. And once again, we persist in our exhortation that an industry that's roughly spends 25% of U.S. gross domestic product really ought to be at the tables arguing on its own behalf. But there are very significant cultural problems for that. So let's see. Well, by the way, guys, I just slammed this together, so you're going to get a little dizzy in places where I decided to put things in a different order. So when Gabriella speaks about how you have to be an importer to be an exporter, or if you want to be an exporter, you also be an importer, we know this story, and I just picked something from Eaton. Eaton has many positions for young engineers in India. They sell a switchgear. Usually it's switchgear, substations, generators, elevators, air handling equipment tends to be the largest equipment that's put into a building, and that's the stuff that can generally get built offshore. So here's Dover elevators. A lot of the elevators obviously are built in place, but a lot of it is also built on the factory floor, and this is where they're at. What do we have here? This is I brought this up as an example of a supply chain, but this is a laboratory supplier who's also offshore. This is not the same thing as a Lennox. I think it's owned by I think it's Ingersoll Rand or Rockwell or United Technologies. In any case, oh wait, maybe Lennox is its own publicly traded company. In any case, it's a laboratory. If you don't have, you can halt your laboratory equipment if you don't have your supply chain right, and obviously they're global. And of course, it's not just the equipment we're putting in facilities. On the academic side, we also have our universities essentially becoming intakes for students to go offshore to other universities. That's one from Georgia. Michigan State's had one for quite a long time. It's a very nice place. And let's see, here's one from Missouri. Missouri also has a program for international studies. When you research the subject of global value chains, and you see how much has been done on it, I just have to think that a lot of the reason there's so much literature on it is that academics generally have travel budgets built into their built into their appointments. I know my wife does. So in any case, here you have intake from the University of Missouri to India, and of course it works in the opposite direction. This is, I believe, this is Japan sending students to Hawaii and to California. Okay. Any questions, guys?
Nope.
Comments? Okay. So one of the canons here is that you have to understand. We cannot go to these Geneva organizations. We talked about them earlier in the year. ITU, IEC, ISO, those are what I call the sister organizations. They're all within a couple blocks of each other in Geneva, or Genève, I guess I could call it. I'll be in there and be there again in June. I should start speaking a little French, huh? So they are, you have to approach those organizations through technical advisory groups. But at some point, and I've been there 5-6 years in a row now. Everybody kind of knows each other. I know the protocol. I don't step on toes. We help each other out. They're actually rather happy with what we're doing here. I try to make a point here. I guess this is the bullet point, isn't it? That a great deal of infrastructure regulation originates in the federal government. If you listen to some of the Canadian debate, it appears to be 80% seems to be coming from their executive branch, similar to ours. It's not coming from the legislative branches. It's coming from the executive branch. And the executive branch, one of the main documents is Circular A119. We talked about that earlier this year. One of the reasons I wanted to bring this issue to our industry's attention is that these agencies, government agencies, executive branch agencies, because they tend to have to move quickly, they are inspired by other regulatory activity in other nations where the percentage of the government to gross domestic product is higher. You know, of course, that the Nordic countries tend to be closer to 50% of gross domestic product. I think we're around 50% gross domestic product, 25%. But in any case, a lot of countries differ culturally, historically, economically, basically according to how much their electorate wants central government control. You see much more of that in Europe, and there's many historical reasons for that, which is another teleconference. So I wanted to give you an example of how in the United States, and this comes from the International Energy Conservation Code, because energy conservation is a worldwide priority. And this is in the first few pages of the International Energy Conservation Code. You will see that they are giving you model language so that your jurisdiction can adopt the IBC or the IECC. In a certain sense, and I don't want my colleagues from the standards community to think this is derisive, but I'm trying to draw a correlation between developing. It's hard work putting together a consensus document. These consensus documents are necessary because otherwise you would have congressional interns, summer interns writing the rules for energy. You don't want that. You want experienced subject matter experts to do it. So they essentially manufacture something, and it's a very highly complicated process to get consensus among a group of material affected stakeholders. So we're manufacturing documents to be incorporated by public law. And here's another example of the National Electrical Code. I'm on this committee. Model language for states, local jurisdictions, counties, whatever, emergency management districts to adopt their particular version of a model administrative code. Now, of course, it works in the other direction. At the global level, at the Geneva organizations, they, again, with apologies for the use of manufacturers, they promote their documents for incorporation by reference into our laws, not just the United States, but worldwide. I like to say that the early drafts of these documents tend to be dilutive. I know Ted's working on something for APA for facilities management. U of M's still going to be still in the mix on that one, by the way. They tend to be dilutive at first. But if you look back, you'll see that the ISO 9000 series has been around for maybe 20, 30 years, and ultimately those practices, as this document's revised, that tends to have a much more meaning, especially to organizations that have to work across national boundaries, and they need consistent benchmarks for trade. Again, this is from a PowerPoint that the ISO makes available to all of its member countries. So here is what is one of the reasons that you would want to reference an ISO document into your federal law if you're a nation. And here's a suggestion from the ISO that regulation hierarchically, I think the implication here is that China is there's a lot of central control in China, and we're on the lower end of central control. We have to talk separately about how all those ISO documents are actually already referenced into U.S. federal law. You just can't get everything done in 30 minutes, so we'll do something separate, and you'll see. It'll be a little bit dreary, but you can see that that it's working both ways. And just as the academic side, we're trading students' academic expertise. Likewise, you can see that those organizations are having an influence in the other direction. So as I like to say, we're in a era of streaming regulation. The internet, the worldwide inner tubes have made that possible. This is the homepage of an organization called YouGov, and they provide data for different bodies, government bodies, who want to regulate stuff. There's a conformity assessment class, there's the innovative class, there's a regulator class. I've had an experience when I was doing more work for the NFPA, and a lot of their electric vehicle meetings are held here in Detroit, and I've always amazed at how many regulators and inspectors and enforcement folks attend those meetings, and how few people who are actually inventing stuff are there. Maybe those people who are inventing stuff are at a different meeting. That's fair to say, but in general, it's just struck me that there is 10 regulators for every one innovator. Of course, this problem is not new. We know, of course, again, this is the regulators' equivalent of what the inspectors. The inspectors have their own journal. I think this comes from the Cato Institute, which tends not to want a lot of regulation, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case, here's just the cover of a magazine to give some dimension and understanding to how strong regulatory forces are in the United States. Here's another magazine. Again, they have their own stuff, their own publications, their own culture. As soon as something gets innovated, they want to start regulating it. So that's why I put this in here. A lot of, as I like to say, creativity is not efficient. It makes a mess of things. A lot of what standardization does is it tries to clean things up so that you find out where you do agree and let the innovators compete on other areas. So standardization to some degree does keep things a little less messy than they would have otherwise been. But I put this in here just because our industry struggles with risk innovation. Despite what I think most of our C-suite wants to see more innovation, I think farther down the org chart, a lot of people got into this business because it wasn't as risk-prone as other industries. So that's what this is here for. But of course, they make a point that if you're too risk-averse, you're going to increase your risk. Anyone who's raised children, and I've raised 3, understand that you've got to let them make their own mistakes. It's sometimes hard for that to happen. Any questions, guys? You guys still with me? How's the sound check?
Nope.
No question?
Problem.
Sounds good.
Okay, good. I haven't annoyed anybody. Trying to stay on the nice side of editorial here. All right. So let's get into some of the specifics. So we have, over the past 6-7 years, U of M originally started putting some of its concerns in front of the U.S. tags. One of the first ones was for biotechnology. One thing you should observe here, and this will be important in our cinematic moment. Oh, by the way, we do try to promise a cinematic moment. Ted, so I know you just can't wait for that. But near the end, I deliver routinely on that. So here is, you see Germany has the secretariat on this one. And my concern for this was that if we're going to be outsourcing, if we're bringing in students from overseas, there's this other political problem of those students going back to their own countries and setting up research enterprises which compete with ours. So I felt we should at least be sensitive to this. And the early drafts of this, and I think this goes back to 2012, specifically mention research facilities. So if, for example, we have research facilities where the eye washes have to be tested once a week, or that there's a tendency for the university to put the researcher in charge of his own testing or his own or in charge of his own lab safety, and then that researcher inadvertently has an accident or a fatality, as the case of UCLA, does that put U.S. universities and research enterprises at risk if we can't our research square footage can't compete with research square footage over here, which doesn't have the same standard of care for safety? So that was the principal reason for this. It looks like they trimmed back the facility part in subsequent drafts. So that's where that stands. I don't want to get into too much. There's a longer story about that one, but it's still important to be engaged in this one. Again, once again from Germany, we're seeing light and lighting. We sent a letter to this one. To the U.S. tag. We supported this one, but of course I voiced concerns about wanting to have some of the metrics sensitive to what was going on in U.S. markets. We have a lot of lighting, community lighting systems in campuses, and I didn't want these markets to, as you see in our cinematic moment, this relationship, this is really a good place to be if you're going to be selling to these markets. So I felt that we wanted to be careful about and follow along how the lighting standards were going to be, product standards principally, were going to be developed. The Europeans are rather well advanced in that area. You might have heard that Eaton moved to Ireland here. I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, let's go on. Here is the ISO Energy Management Standard. This one, I think ISO is the secretariat of this one. There's a relationship between Georgia Tech and the ISO. I believe that the Department of Energy has identified Georgia Tech as the liaison of the U.S. tag for the ISO 50001 and the 14000 series. I tried to get a web page that would make that clear, but it's a very complicated document, or at least it seems to have many branches to the investigations in it, in the inquiry and the statements made. So I wasn't able to find anything. Suffice to say, Georgia Tech seems to be closer to how this document is being developed than any other university in the United States. We also had made some statements to the IBC committees about whether or not this should be incorporated by reference into the IBC if we're supposed to be harmonizing United States energy standards with world standards. This would be one that ought to be there. They rejected it. Largely because they want to, the United States wants to see prescriptive requirements, and generally the Geneva organizations want to see performance requirements. Here's one that just hit the transom a couple of weeks ago. It's much more complicated. When you get drilled down into it, you realize it deals with roads. And so I understand that roads and wastewater engineering, it looked like it could affect some of the campus infrastructure. As I try to say, that concrete is the most widely used building material in the world. And I believe that's the case in most campuses, so we wanted to make sure we followed this. This is interesting because it's coming from the European Committee for Standardization, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. So I have a couple colleagues here, Jack among them, 3 colleagues actually, that are very knowledgeable in this area and we're interested in it. So they'll be following that for the industry. The Koreans, they don't show, here we are, there's Korea. They are running the tables, so to say, on an educational management system. So our industry, which is what, 8% of gross of our of federal expenditures, that's 8% of the budget, and 4% of gross domestic product. No, it's 8% of gross domestic product, 40% of expenditures of the federal government. In any case, it's interesting that I don't believe we are participating in this, so everybody else seems to be dealing with this. So when we think about what it might mean to manage an educational organization, have an international educational management standard, and we're not participating, sometimes that's because there's no organization in the United States that's willing to deal with the administrative burden of being the tag administrator. That also is a separate teleconference. Facilities management, we know about this one. This one's being managed out of England. This one just came in. We just talked about this one from yesterday. I'm concerned about manufacturers forcing us or creating the conditions in which we are building upon existing inefficiencies. That's why I like to see a lot of the wasteful behavior of designers beaten out of the National Electrical Code before we start overlaying microgrid on it. Nothing against microgrid. Let's just get the wasteful behaviors and the waste out first. And other. Human resource management, this is something that used to be run by another country, or at least it was run by the United States. Now the University of Texas will be administering it. They'll be the U.S. tag on that one. And I think, so those are the main ones. There are a couple other ones. There are hundreds of ISO documents, but I only picked, 5, 6, or 7 over the past, say, 10 years that I felt were important. Any thoughts, gentlemen? Okay, let's getting close here to our cinematic moment. So this is a map of the ISO prepared, and it goes back to 2009. I think it's probably needs to be updated, but it was easy to find, and I felt it was authoritative. So here I'm trying to describe the different organizations that represent their country to the core Geneva organization. So this is kind of like the world. This is the United Nations of technical standards and management standards. ISO is quite heavy on management standards. IEC is the oldest one. ITU has quite a global reach for obvious reasons. They deal with the cable, they deal with satellites. So in any case, they're all here. All these nations have one vote per country into how these documents are developed. And I didn't get to all of them. I couldn't find them, and I think you get the point that one country, one vote. And then you get over here, and here you have the North American market, and you've got 3 organizations, ANSI, the Mexicans and the Canadians. There's more down in South America. The markets are probably not as well developed here, but I picked 3 of these that I felt were strong economies. So my cinematic moment is this, that if you look closely at where the growth is in the world now, you can see that the top 8, I think, is that 7, 8, are all in this area here. No surprise to anybody. And it strikes me that Europe does have an advantage. They have this, is it 14 time zones? I'm not sure. It's 11, 12, 13 time zones, say, between here and there. They can ship along this market. Doesn't mean that it's not hard to get it across the Khyber Pass, but in any case, they can ship rather easily onto this continent. And also, those economies are growing. The United States, well, not so much. And that's my thesis, is that we need to be attentive, not just to the facility side, but the fact that other multinational corporations they need growth, right? Their growth is there. They need growth. They need to deliver a return on investment to their shareholders. So wherever growth is, that's where they will be, and that will be likely where the standards will be developed. The European nations are in an ideal place because of their skill in language, but because of their access to these markets. And frankly, many of these markets do like to deal with Europe rather than with us. They deal with every country in a different way. So that, gentlemen, that was a cinematic moment. I can see all the drama there. I like to say it's like a 30-3 voting advantage, but in practical reality, we have a large market over here anyway. We're still an $18 trillion economy, and if you've seen previous presentations, I believe the entire Eurozone is about 18 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
So we're roughly, I think they're slightly larger. And let's see. Okay, finally, the final sales pitch here is every day. Again, I repeated our canons. What do we do every day? This is what we try to do every day. And thanks to Andrew, we have been able to granulate our blog so that you don't have to see standards that are up for comment that don't apply to you. So I'll go live on that in a second, and I guess the final one, if there's other questions, is everyone can have a good weekend.
All right.
Oh, that's cute, Mike.
You like that?
Oh, yeah.
So let me bore you for a moment. I'll go live. I didn't like to get out of Prezi because sometimes it can be rather annoying, but if you go over to our, where's our website here? Okay, here we go. I'm used to this. I know where to go. So you go down to the bottom here, and you subscribe to our blog. And Andrew, aha! See, now if you just want to deal with ISO, every day you put in another category. So roughly, we're trying to get these. We're trying to keep these down and consolidating some of them because it gets to be too unwieldy, and we're trying hard to keep our website simple. So, Ted, you might want to subscribe to this one. Others might want to subscribe to that one, but you'll get a daily. Or if you want to see everything that's coming across the off the ticker, so to say, you can subscribe to them all and get them all. So, with that, gentlemen, any final reflections here, guys?
Another good week.
Yeah. Okay then, guys.
I liked your marker board.
What's that?
Well, I liked your marker board.
Well, I guess maybe I should do more of that then, huh? How about you, Mike? Yeah, we'll talk next week. So we're going to try to clean this up a little bit and find a way to make these a little bit better. As I say, my job is to write code and get votes. Telling people what we're doing, sometimes it has to take second place, but there's always little things we can do along the way to make them a little bit better. So, yeah, guys?
So, yeah.
All righty.
So,
You had something to say, Mike?
no, just thoughts on how would I apply effects to make it more, I guess, compelling.
More professional sounding. Great. All right.
Yeah, more professional, yeah.
Get a lot of my audio noise out of it. So I'm gonna we can talk
there's
about
some
that.
feedback. Yeah. And,
So we'll stop the recording now. Thank everybody. Next week we may do Lucas's. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry to extend this longer, but we appear to be going viral on a presentation that my colleague, my co-author actually, he and I wrote a book. Oops. So, gee, what did we do here? We're up to 53 views on this one. So he tried to give the broad contours of the centralized versus decentralized energy conundrum on campus. And it's not policy. It's sort of quasi-policy. So I'm thinking that next week I may well just put this up there and we'll give it a little more flesh. Maybe Lucas will call in on it to answer questions. But in general, we've had 6 in a row that were interactive, and it's time to take a break, especially now that we're on the leading edge of trying to get the IBC monograph marked up. So, Ted, you're welcome to join that enterprise. So that, everybody, I guess let's really call it a good weekend, and thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much.
Cool.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Bye.
Thanks.